Among the many problems Italy has, tourism shouldn't be part of it. Italy has cities rich of art and monuments, a cultural and artistic heritage unique in the world, but this isn't enough. Surely, due to terrorism risk in the foreign countries, Italy was one of the favorite destinations in the past year. But if we take away the objective beauty of its cities and the uniqueness of food, we can establish that tourists who visit this country are not satisfied. In fact, according to Confcommercio, tourists stay there only for days. In tourist satisfaction ranking, in terms of positive sentiment, we have on the podium Trentino Alto Adige with 88.5%, Basilicata with 87.7%, and Val d'Aosta with 87.3%. Apparently, despite what we think, the southern Italy is not a required destination. To tourists, would be enough arrive at the airport and get their luggages in reasonable times, or take a taxi driven by a driver who speaks their language, or English at least. They would be enough, walk on clean streets, take a bus without waiting for hours, arrive outside the museum and don't find the riding clothes without a real reason, or take a coffee without paying 10 euros. These are the problems that tourists blame to Italians: transports, hotel costs, restaurants that lately take advantage of them, making them pay enormous sums of money. Venice is one of the protagonists of these cases, famous for presenting a bill of 600 euros for a lunch to a tourist family. At this rate, Italy will lose an important wealth, being tourism a fundamental component of national GDP. Dark tourism, also called as horror tourism, thanatourism, or macabre tourism, is the research of dark and scary places. It is a very wide concept because it involves visits in places with different historical connotations. There are countless examples: Chernobyl, Auschwitz, Cambodian killing fields, Sarah Scatz's house, Cogne's villa, or the famous wreck of the Costa Concordia. They are tragedies remade in the history that have in common a large number of people who go to visit them only to take a smiling photo. There are different reasons why people do it. Some people do it for both. There is who does it to feel authentic or who just doesn't have respect. The phenomenon, in the course of the time, has increased even more, above all thanks to the development of media. In fact, thanks to them, tragic events where too many people have lost their lives turned into tourist attractions. Internet and television allow to the phenomenon to expand, and even tour operators facilitate this activity planning real tours. One of the craziest travel is surely Chernobyl, that every year receives 15,000 people from all the world. Absurd if we think that still today the radiation level is so high. Many people have decided to exploit the phenomenon of dark tourism from economic viewpoints. Those countries that don't have natural dark attractions thought of create them. An example is the London Dungeon, the famous horror adventure park opened in London in 1974, which aims to raise terror and horror through special effects and sounds. Dark tourism grows every year of 65% and it's worth about $263 billion. Another negative aspect of tourism is undoubtedly sex tourism. Sex tourism is the phenomenon that involves travels aimed at achieving sexual services from girls, boys, and unfortunately even from children. It is present in all the world, in particular in Bangladesh, Brazil, Bulgaria, Colombia, Cuba, Europe and Africa, Nepal, Thailand, and Ukraine. Usually, the travel is undertaken by tourists from wealthy countries to developing countries, and it may involve cash payments or immaterial goods. Are about 3 million tourists who every year travel with this purpose. According to a survey, was discovered that 65% is made by occasional tourists, 30% are usual tourists, and 5% are pedophiles. Victims of sex tourism are for 60% girls and boys between 13 and 17 years old, for 30% between 7 and 12 years old, and for 10% between 0 and 6 years old. Child exploitation is the most striking aspect of sex tourism. Asia leads the record with about 1 million victims of forced prostitution. At the second place, there is India with 500,000 children, then Thailand with 300,000, and lastly, Philippines with 200,000 children. Most people think that the phenomenon concerns only men, but in reality, female sex tourism grows more and more. Even here, media and tour operators do their part. There are organized travel with programs that offer relaxing weeks in the company of children included in the price. Moreover, low-cost flights permits to reach those destinations at an affordable price. Internet gave the opportunity to sex tourists to spread quickly photos and videos of their journeys. The turnover is not low. It has an annual basis of $100 billion, an activity considered a real wealth for certain countries, but in reality it's only a downfall, above all for those poor children who often are motivated by their own families only to earn something, because in those countries the poverty is so high. In fact, the unemployment rate is nearly 50%. Fortunately, have been implemented laws to protect minors, but the phenomenon is still so alive. In conclusion, we can see how poor and selfish is human mentality that, to satisfy its own curiosity or its own pleasures, is capable of step on the tragedies or on the life of poor innocent children. We need to work so that a beautiful thing like tourism is enhanced and protected and not exploited as in these cases.